Orestria, and these are my seasonal impressions for fall 2023. And I want to welcome you to a delightfully sapphic season of anime, where isekai is out, being brought back to your own past is in. And, seriously, the lesbians are eating. Even the shows that weren't officially yuri were sapphic as all hell. I think this is the most shows I've ever watched in one season, so if I don't have much to say about a show, I'm gonna race through it. As a corollary, I've got so many shows in the recommended section. Let's get going.
And we start, as always, with the nope category. Shows I think are not worth your time.
Ojo to Banken-kun. Our main character's parents die, and she gets taken in by her literal Yakuza grandpa and given a handsome young man as her main caretaker guardian. She's 5 in this scene. Feeling trapped, she purposefully applies to a high school far away so she can escape the Yakuza association and have a chance to grow as a person. Instead, her 26-year-old guardian, hello fellow childrens, himself into her high school, scares away all the other guys, and is her main romantic interest in the series. If I have to explain to you what horrific grooming shit this is, then you have wandered into the wrong YouTube video. Buta no liver wa kanetsu shiro. In most seasons, this would be the most horrific show. Our main character is a man who dies and is isekai'd. He's a pig, and I'm not talking about his porcine body. When he sees the main girl, his thoughts are, I hope her skirt is short. As a pig, I could sneak a peek any time. And I hope she's a high schooler. She's telepathic, so she realizes he's not a normal pig, and presumably gets to hear all his foul thoughts about her. Can't say any more than that, because that is all that I saw before I stopped watching. Bikkuri Men. This anime's purpose is to sell chocolate. Now, that does not inherently make it an unwatchable anime. I liked that Sanrio Boys show, and that was made purely to sell merch. But this show, basic characters and characterization, basic animation, no female characters whatsoever. The characters look like the characters on the stickers from the chocolate treats, and people are trying to steal the chocolate treats to get the stickers. They're literally not even marketing the food as being good, just the collectible stickers that come with them. Pokensha ni naritai to miyako ni deteita musume ga S-rank ni nateta. We have a show about a daughter and father, which, wow, we don't get a lot of that in anime, honestly. He's an ex-adventurer, and she's gone to the city to become an awesome adventurer in her own right. But they don't get to see each other as often as they'd like. Unfortunately, that's basically the entire plot. Girl tries to come home for a visit, something work-related happens and she can't. Comedy ensues. By the end of the episode, it was making the father-daughter relationship feel a little weird. And I am willing to watch bad animation if I like the rest of the show, but fucking look at this. Don't turn your eyes away, you coward. This is anti-Sakuga. MF Ghost. This is a car racing show, so it has an uphill battle with me, as I actively don't care. And I didn't even make it to the car racing. The first 6 minutes of this anime was entirely how to make the worst female character, which is not going to endear me to your show, especially when you're sexualizing a high schooler. Kikansha no maho wa tokubetsu desu. We start with Ugly CG Dragon, Info Dump, Ugly CG Dragon. Cool. In this show, our main character has failed in his mission to save the world, but finds himself back in his younger self, with a second chance bolstered by his future knowledge. Get used to this concept, this is a huge trend. I was going to call it self-isekai, but Dappington on the Discord recommended Ijinsei. So instead of another world, another life. Thanks, Dap. Our main character's younger self is in magic school. And a particularly dickish one, where the nobles are in the alpha class and the commoners are in the beta class, regardless of power level, meaning despite their world literally being threatened, they ignore the talents of people who aren't nobility. I mean, maybe they all deserve to die. I would be remiss, however, not to mention the best part of the show, the names. Boromir Napolitan. Romantica. Kamiarabi. In this show, some people are chosen, by their phones, to be a god candidate. And by people, I of course mean high schoolers. They gain the power to make wishes, but the wishes must be paid for with, karma or whatever, and they have to fight each other. This one hurts. I was excited for this. The poster looked really stylish. Yoko Taro is involved. It's vaguely Death Game-ish. The stylization does help with the CG, but I still really don't like the character designs. There was some coercive sexual stuff, and the main guy is the classic, but I don't want to fight or hurt anyone type. I have heard it gets bonkers later, but I just couldn't imagine watching more. Toaru Osan no VR MMO Katsudoki. Later this season, we will get maybe the best VR MMORPG anime I've ever seen. One with not only constant, awesome fights, but a deep understanding of gaming and gamers. And there's this fucking show. We watch the main character actually choose the most boring possible character from the terrible character creation options. And he tells us he's going to be underpowered on purpose because he wants to play solo. Bro, if you're playing solo, you're gonna need good skills. Just fucking say no to people when they ask if you want to play with them. Even with his shit skills, he gets friend requests because duh. He's also, in this show, the only person in the whole game interested in skills like cooking and medicine. Do I have to explain how unbelievable that is? We're also told that people don't choose bows because they were really underpowered in the beta testing. And I'm like, this is a game. The company is going to see that this popular weapon style is garbage and fix it. And if not, they're incompetent. Since this is an anime, his unusual skill and weapon choices become OP with a game rebalance. I like the idea of a show being about the economy and skill balance of an MMORPG, but this show is only accomplishing that by thoroughly misunderstanding how these things actually work. So, in summary, it's bland, the animation is weak, and the show insulted my age.
The fine section is for shows that I think work. If it's got a trope you love, a genre you love, a character you love, these can be a great time. But if it's not your thing, they may not be worth it.
Dog Signal. Our main character gets broken up with by his girlfriend, who, in an unbelievably irresponsible act, gifts him a dog so he won't feel lonely. I appreciate the guy not wanting to abandon the dog, but he also doesn't put in any work to figure out how to care for a dog, making him also irresponsible. He happens to meet a down on his luck, but so talented it's almost magic dog trainer who agrees to help him out. I think this show has a good message. You don't have a bad dog, you haven't trained them. But it was a pretty dull watch. Hikikomari Kyuketsuki no Mon Mon. A hikikomori is a Japanese term for a shut-in, so the title is a pun based on that and the main character's name, Mari. She's not the typical otaku in their bedroom enabled by their family type, though. She's vampiric nobility, who's too squeamish to drink blood, making her quite weak. She gets press-ganged into being a general and a candidate to be the emperor, meaning she has to lead a vampire army who we're told are all incredibly power-hungry and will happily kill her to take her place if they sense weakness. With the help of her maid, she has to pretend to be powerful while actually being the worst. In the interest of saving time, I'm going to briefly list some complaints and move on. The liar reveal trope as the plot of the whole show sucks. All the soldiers are men for no fucking reason. And her maid is into her. In that way. For fan service jokes. No thanks. Kimi no koto ga dai daisuki no 100 nin no kanojo. I'm gonna start by acknowledging that I am the furthest thing from the target audience for this show. As always, use your own judgment. Our main character has just graduated middle school, and he has asked out 100 girls, striking out each time. I mean, maybe because at the rate at which you're asking girls out, there's no way you have time to actually develop a relationship or interest with anyone, and clearly just want the concept of a girlfriend, but I digress. He goes to a shrine, and the god of the shrine is like, my bad, bro. To make it up to you, I'm gonna set you up to meet 100 soulmates in high school. The meta jokes are nice, but putting up a big skip button is dangerous when I do kind of want to skip. There are also meta jokes that are parodying a genre I already don't enjoy, while the show still revels in the ecchi of it all. I can recognize a level of quality here. If you're into ecchi, it's very kind of you to be watching my videos. Dekopoko Majo no Oyako Jijo. An old witch, who looks quite young, like 12, finds a human baby in the forest and adopts her. the baby grows into a 16-year-old with a physique that would make a porn star envious. People usually mistake the child for the witch and the witch for the apprentice. The child has a serious mother complex, seemingly ready to kill anyone the mother tries to date. Not that the mother seems that interested in dating. And boob jokes ensue. The jokes were missing me so hard that to cope, I was inventing queer subtext to amuse myself. Like, no, the daughter isn't into her mom. She's actually aro ace. And the aunties are a lesbian couple. Delusion. Convince yourself. Keikenzumi na kimi to keikenzero na ore ga otsukiai zuru hanashi. There's a beautiful girl in school with a reputation for dating and dumping guys all the time. Our local dweeb loses a bet and thus has to confess to her. And she agrees to date him. Actually, it turns out, she always says yes when she's asked out because she sees it as an opportunity to get to know someone. And she's been the one getting dumped. We also learn that she feels like having sex when dating a guy is a duty that she's expected to fulfill. Our dweeb turns down the sex, which is wonderfully respectful of him, especially understanding where she's coming from. And I like that her past doesn't make him think less of her. I like the messaging here. A lot of high school romance shows are really awful about stuff like this, so I'm glad this is available for kids to watch. Kids, not my grown ass. Potion danomi de ikinobimasu. Our main character gets isekai'd. I do not remember how. I barely remember this show at all, so let's be brief. Our girl does a good job asking for boons. She can understand all languages, instantly make magic potions for anything, and has the ubiquitous item box. But our smart character keeps doing dumb stuff, like not realizing people are obviously going to be sus of her potions. Literally, if the animation was better, or the logic was better, or I liked the art style more, or if it was funnier, not even all of those, just one or two of those, that would be enough to win me over. But it's such a busy season and this show is just fine. Overtake. Hey, remember when I said I couldn't care less for car racing? Still don't give a fuck. We follow a photographer with some kind of trauma where he can't bring himself to take pictures of people anymore. He gets recruited to go to an F1 race and take pictures of the cars. Gets lost and wanders over to the F4 area instead, because he knows about as much as I do about car racing. He finds Komaki Motors, a small team that's trying their best despite not having money, and he gets interested. There's nothing wrong with this. Seems to have decent quality. It's low on my list because it has like half a female character, which obviously annoys me, and it's about car racing. Megami no Daigo, Kyukoku no Orenji. We see that some kind of disaster has befallen Tokyo and the whole city's on fire. We join firefighters, actually the fire rescue team, saving survivors from the Tokyo Skytree. And then we cut back to the fire rescue people doing Spartan training like boot camp. It's super not for me. Not interested. Not only is the entire rest of the episode about their training, the next time on suggests that that's what the next episode will be about too. Like, this is two different shows. You can have a show about firefighting training and a show about firefighting in a mega disaster, but I don't need to see you go to school to be a firefighter to appreciate that you can fight fires. It seems pretty grounded in reality. It has explanations about the tools of the trade, so I can see people being interested in this. People other than me. Atarashi joshi wa dou tenen. Our main guy left his previous job because of an abusive boss so bad that he has ulcers from stress. Basically workplace PTSD. As someone who recently changed jobs and spent the first month at the new place constantly anxious that I was going to get in trouble, except never getting in trouble because the new job is normal and the old job was weird, it hits a little close to home. His new boss is very confident at work, but a total dunderhead in life, which they seem to have translated as goofy, which does not feel right to me. I think absent-minded or oblivious fits better. His boss is the kind of guy who will tell you he lost his phone while talking to you on the phone. This show's sins, starting every segment with the plot explanation, being mildly funny but never enough to make me laugh, and the infamous being super gay without being gay. Best I can say is, I guess it's nice to have a show that acknowledges workplace trauma. There are still 30 shows left to talk about. We can do better. Migi to Dali. My first note for this show was, What in the ever-loving fuck am I watching? We follow two orphans who are trying to solve the murder of their mother. They get themselves adopted by an elder couple in the town where their mother was murdered. But the couple wanted one child, so they decided to operate as one person. I saw this tagged as drama mystery, which it is, but it's also a surreal comedy. Like, Migi means right. Dali is short for Hidari, which means left. Their name when they're combined as one person is Hitori, single or solo. Just think about that naming sense for a moment. I believe this show is worth watching for an episode or two and seeing if it clicks for you. Because if nothing else, if you are looking for something different in anime, this is different. But it didn't click with me. Rest in peace, Sanonami. Yuzuki Sanshi no yon kyodai. We follow a family of brothers. Their parents died a few years ago. The oldest is a new teacher in his 20s. The youngest is in first grade, so they have a pretty big age spread. The show is a cute family drama about their dynamics, particularly between the third child, who is annoyed that the second child is given much more responsibility than him, even though they're less than a year apart. This feels very accurately childish. The anime itself is cute, simple, a bit on the lazy side. Falls into the it's not bad but I'm not interested category. Bokuran no Ameiro. The main character used to play this lame shooter with a bunch of people, and now he works at a gaming cafe with one of them. A cafe owned by her dad. They find out said dad is in debt, so the players of his esports team are quitting and they get roped in, even though the main character stopped playing when his own dad died and his younger sister got injured. I would not be opposed to watching more, it just didn't make the cut. Not the least of which because it seems that a lot of the show is going to be footage of the video game they're playing, which looks like garbage. I mean, look at this Final Fantasy VIII quality run animation. Seiken Gakuen no Makenzukai. The Dark Lord sees the writing on the wall and knows that he's defeated before his enemies actually get to take him out. He uses a spell to preserve himself such that he will be reborn 1,000 years later. Only when he wakens, there's been an issue, so he's in a fleshy child body. Also, technology has advanced hugely and in ways he never could have anticipated. Which is smart on the anime's part. Like, of fucking course, right? It leaves us with, like, cell phones, and some of the titular holy swords are bazookas. The main guy is like a pseudo-chinibyo, which isn't a trope I particularly enjoy, but it's much more palatable because he actually was a powerful evil king, and he actually does have awesome powers. Unfortunately, we hit the second episode, and we arrived at the school part of the title, and I swiftly lost interest. Under Ninja. We're introduced immediately to a modern-day world with ninjas, thanks to some American soldiers delightfully played by people who do not speak English.
Nobody else can do this but Ninja.
What a glorious start. However, this was just not my cup of tea. The realistic art isn't that appealing to me, and the constant foreigner idiot thing is annoying. I haven't seen much that actively does appeal to me. That said, I don't think it's bad, just not for me. It certainly has a sense of humor, it just doesn't align with mine. Kawagoe Boys Sing. The first episode is delightfully unhinged. The principal of a school forces her grandson, I don't remember which, to lead her school's non-existent choir to a nationals victory. That man is a genius conductor who's such an asshole that he lost his position. It's the kind of genius who is utterly oblivious to the concerns and feelings of those around him. He then proceeds to harass students into joining the club. Like, I will solve your mental trauma about singing in public in one episode with the power of being blindingly inconsiderate. That said, delightfully unhinged is a hard line to traverse, and in the second episode, the issues started to pile up. They had to introduce new characters because they needed more club members, but I already couldn't tell you shit about 2 of the 3 boys from the first episode, and some of the characters they chose to introduce include a character so annoying I almost stopped watching immediately. As I was trying to cope with the delusional rival boy, they started singing, and I tried to skip through the singing scene, and it was like 2 minutes long, and I remembered, like, oh god, that's right. This is a music show. It wants me to sit through the music. They should have stuck to what they did in the first episode. Singing a classic English song that they can't pronounce. I enjoyed that. Paradox Live, the animation. I don't typically watch music shows, but this one seemed to have potential to be hilarious, so I decided to give it a shot. There's a metal that lets rappers channel their power into illusions. Like their singing creates visuals that everyone can see. The anime doesn't seem to address the fact that every rapper we see is a guy, aside from the non-binary person, so I guess the metal just doesn't work for women? Cool! Paradox Live is the name of a concert competition at a live hall that mysteriously disappeared, along with the all-time most popular rap band ever several years ago, and which has just as mysteriously reappeared and invited all the big groups to perform and compete once again. Everyone seems to live with their bandmates, I guess. And we spend a bunch of time setting up each group's reasons for wanting to compete. The designs are successfully appealing. So we find out that using this metal slowly destroys your mental health by constantly showing you your worst memories. An interesting idea that does not seem worth it to me, but go off. There's quality here, and it is silly. Just not silly enough to keep me watching. Onimusha. I am not familiar with the game. This show has lots of exposition. Lots and lots of exposition. And somehow I still have no idea what's going on. Or have any reason to care about anyone, anything. They did a "there are traitors in our party" reveal, and I don't know anything about anyone here. I guess the fight scenes were cool, but I didn't care much because I didn't understand the stakes. What a womanless snore fest. 16-bit sensation, another layer. Our main girl works at a modern-day small games company making erotic games. She loves drawing and designing characters, and has a bunch of posters of popular anime in her room, but at her job she only gets to draw boring shit like the backs of background characters. Somehow she ends up time-slipping back to the golden era of indie aero games, and gets taken in by a company that has made one of her favorite games. I was bored and sped up half of the episode, but when we got to the past, and they were getting into the details about production of 16-bit games, that stuff was cool. Then she went back to the future again. This anime looks really good, but I feel like it just doesn't have the storytelling and pacing chops to hold my attention. I mean, it did the in medias res, then work back trick, when I didn't need any of that backstory. In my opinion, they should have started with her going to the mysterious game shop, and what was the end of the first episode should have been the midway point. Watashi no oshi wa akuyaku reijo. It's an otome game show. Our main character is isekai'd into the game world with all of her game knowledge. You know how it is. But this time she's not in the villainous role, she's in the main character role. The big difference here is she has no interest in the romanceable characters. Her heart is set on the villainous. Our main character is a lesbian! This show is so bog standard ugly. Just magic school stuff with romanceable characters. It's slow, it's boring, and I watched all of it. And I'd do it again. We have an officially, canonically, lesbian main character basically from the jump, and I appreciate that so damn much. We are blessed that this isn't the only sapphic show this season either. The whole reason I care about sharing my anime opinions is because I'm a queer feminist woman, so don't act surprised that I like this. Although, I need to be clear that the main character's behavior is not acceptable. The idea that you can harass someone until they like you is toxic and horrid. This show is bad and predictable. I'm just forgiving a lot of sins for having a coming out scene. Boshoku no Berserk. We're in one of those anime fantasy worlds where people have skills and your lot in life depends hugely on your skill. Our main character has a shitty skill, gluttony, and I hope you're ready to listen to loud growling sound effects for most of the first episode, baby! He's so poor that his job is being abused by some shitty holy knights. They make him stand there and hold a banner and guard a portcullis that they're meant to be watching. When there really is a criminal being chased towards the portcullis he's guarding, he steals his resolve and manages to pike the guy despite having no real combat ability. And something inside him, for the first time, feels full. Turns out he can steal skills by killing. The downside being that now that he's gotten a taste for it, he can never go back or else he'll go berserk. He also gets himself a magic sword, and I have no explanation for this, but I've always loved talking swords. I was immediately worried that this was going to turn into some rebirth of healer edgy shit, but it actually has the opposite problem. This show seems determined not to focus on the talking sword and killer go berserk thing, which is fun. Instead, it spends most of its time faffing around with the smoopy romance plotline between our guy and the one good holy knight. She loves him for no apparent reason, and he loves her because she's a perfect angel of kind perfection. Ugh. Pluto. We're in the future dealing with some classic topics. Robots that look like humans, Asimov's laws, and all that jazz. The first episode is an hour long. Actually, after writing the script, I found out they're all an hour long, which was a little odd to me since it was pretty clearly two different stories told sequentially. The first half was some detective stuff, which did good double duty as an introduction to the setting. I really liked this part. The second bit of the episode totally lost me. It's just this annoying, grumpy man who's a famous composer. He has a robot butler he doesn't want. He's complaining about everything being fake, and it just drags. I intended to watch the second episode, but I was watching so many other shows that I never got around to it. Himetsu no Oukoku. Let's go ahead and give this a gore and general other edgy shit warning. Since time immemorial, witches have been looking after and guiding humans, and humanity has prospered, becoming a technologically advanced society with cell phones, TV, all kind of cool tech. But, being the greedy asshole species we can sometimes be, the king decided, what if we became the dominant species? Humanity creates a device that shuts down magic, and then, and I gave you a warning for horrible shit, humanity genocides the witches, including the main character's teacher. Humans can't typically use magic, but he's been specially trained to use this quill by the witch. This is a really tough sit, because they do a good job of making you care about the characters in the little time that they had. If it was just the first episode setting the scene, maybe that would be fine. I was excited to see what would happen next, but there's no way around it. This show just has a clear cruel streak. I want to enjoy the main dude's revenge. I love me a gory murder rampage, honestly. But it's hard to enjoy when he's mowing down civilians more so than anyone remotely related to what happened. The show also loves making you care about someone than brutally murdering them. And the more they do it, the less effective it becomes. The bottom line is, this show is not fun. Undead unluck. In this version of our modern world, some people have powers, always expressed as something. Our main character's power is unluck. If someone touches her skin to skin, they will receive murderously bad luck. The longer you touch her, the worse the effect will be. And she meets Undead, a guy who cannot die. He sees her ability as an opportunity. Maybe they can spark enough unluck to actually end his immortal existence. So he starts groping her and decides he wants to have sex with her, the creepiness of which is compounded by Undead typically being naked, since he can regenerate body parts but not clothes. Unluck comes up with a plan to get Undead to stop groping her, convincing him that her unluck ability is stronger the closer she is emotionally to someone, so he should leave her alone because it's in his best interest to get her to fall in love with him. And maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it feels like Unluck does actually start falling for him, and falling for him because of the way she's constantly getting maidened and rescued by him.
I've heard relationships based on intense experiences never work.
Okay.
There are cool ideas here, like the ways Undead uses his ability for combat, and how they combine their powers to weaponize them, but the whole show just made me deeply uncomfortable. Oh, that's such a long title. Konyaku haki sareta reijou o hirotta ore ga ikenai koto o oshiekomu. So our main girl is a noble girl in title, but treated like a slave. And then the prince frames her for a bunch of treasonous shit in order to break off the engagement. She runs away and finds the rumored Demon King's mansion in the woods. I'm unclear if he's actually the Demon King or that's just a rumor he spread. In any case, he seems less evil and more aggressively chaotic. The great demon lord, Alan, lives in a mansion in the forest, but he still gets the newspaper. He finds out why she's a runaway, and thankfully he's exactly the sort to say, I'm going to protect this felon. even if he has to threaten to kill himself to get her to stay. Maybe he's a little dramatic. So about the title of this show. He's introducing her to being naughty. The English translation using naughty for everything. It's not wrong, but it accidentally makes the show sound way more perverted than it is, and it's not the vibe in Japanese. What's actually happening is that Alan is too much of a drama king to admit he likes her and wants to make her happy by helping her experience new things. But that's too fucking normal. So the naughty byline is how he makes it chaotic. Just when I was accepting this show, like, it works as a dinner show if I increase the speed, Alan's sister shows up in random slutwear that's unlike anything else we've seen anyone wear in the show. And I start to notice that the romance vibes in this show feel terrible. Like, Alan feels less like a romantic interest and more like a helicopter parent. And that's where I gave up. Tearmoon Teikoku Monogatari Dantou Dai Kara Hajimaru Hime no Tensai Gyakuten story. We have a quasi-Marie Antoinette, complete with her own insensitive quote about if people can't eat bread, who gets guillotined. She is Ijinseid and wakes up as her 12-year-old self, but with the memories of what happened. Show number 2, still not the last one this season either. Her foreknowledge? The kingdom's finances will soon collapse. There will be a famine, and she knows who still cared for her when she was imprisoned, and who led the rebellion that ended her life. Now, she just has to fix it all somehow. The difficult part is that she's an idiot. Such an idiot that part of her plan to stay alive is avoid the people who revolutioned me, not befriend the people who revolutioned me so they like me. But her being an idiot kind of works. Usually characters in these situations are either the dumbest person to ever live or keikakudori smart. Her being in the middle was entertaining. Like, she's scheming, but she's doing it on false premises. And then she bass-ackwards herself into situations where people think she's brilliant. See, the Japanese language is usually a lot more roundabout than English, and you're expected to read the air, to interpret what's being said. This show is people so good at reading the room, they're accidentally making shit up, inventing genius intentions behind her actions that are unintended. However, you need a high tolerance for anime bullshit for this one, which really brings it down. I can't recommend it to people who I think would otherwise enjoy this kind of story because it's a bit much. Spy Family. Do I have to introduce Spy Family? The show is about an expert spy in charge of an operation to get close to a reclusive bureaucrat by using the stupid rules at the fancy-ass school the guy's kids go to. He recruits a woman to be a sham wife, not realizing she's an assassin, and an orphan girl to be his daughter, not realizing she's a psychic. They also adopt a dog, not realizing he has precognition. I loved the first season, but as time goes on, we get more into a regular pattern. Some segments are great, but overall the show feels kind of uneven. I don't like some of the main setups. For instance, most of the stuff at school, the spy woman who's obsessed with Lloyd, Yor's brother who's obsessed with her. I'll probably watch like the first and last 2 episodes of every season because that seems to be where the main plot is concentrated. That's about it for me. Deadmount Death Play Season 2. I don't know who the intended audience for this is because it's a beautiful hot mess of silliness. And I love it. This show has so many characters, so many factions, and feels no shame at constantly introducing more. Stuff is always happening. I'm borderline lost on what's going on, except it's pretty good at reminding you of what you need to know and delivering on exciting scenes to make it feel worth it. And I like the characters. They're quirky. They're funny. This might be the most fun show you'll ever watch where half the main cast is dead. Dr. Stone New World Part 2. Dr. Stone is set in a world where nearly every human on Earth was mysteriously turned to stone by a light. A literal genius named Senku gets released from his stone form and sets about saving the world with science. This show will bring you through different eras of science from the stone world to now. And we're in the seafaring era. But it doesn't feel like an educational show. It feels like the fun shonen romp that it is. I've talked about this twice before, so I'm not really sure what else to say. Except, while not super close, it feels like the end is coming. And to me, this is a positive. If your show goes on forever, it's easier to lose the plot and harder to have a satisfying conclusion. Conclusions are good. And I'm hyped for the next step that we've been shown. Kemono Hashiron no Kindan Suiri. This show follows two men. One is our home stand-in, the titular Kemono Hashiron. He was a member of this super special detective school organization until he got framed for a crime and banned from detectiving. Who doesn't love a good detective reasoning show? And while Ron has a weird personality, it's not the standard Sherlock personality, which I found refreshing. The other man is a police detective who sucks. I also don't remember his name because Ron calls him Toto. Toto gets Ron's help with a case, and then it turns into a partnership where Ron solves the case, but to keep it a secret that he's doing detectiving, they pass it off as Toto solving the case, thus bettering his career as well. For a show about the friendship of two guys, this Fujoshi got, zero Fujo bait from it. They just felt like friends. Am I ill? The cases are relatively episodic, but there's an overarching plot in terms of Ron and the detective organization that acts as sinew holding the show together. So it still feels like there's progress. I have a bunch of minor nitpicks, but I won't get into them here because they would be too spoilery, I think. Suffice to say, you definitely need to suspend your disbelief. This show's just fun. Shy. War is over because superhumans started being born. Sure show. Whatever you say. That's the premise here. And the fun starts for me with the fact that it seems that each country has one superhero, which means we get more of my favorite thing, Japanese stereotypes of other countries. I'll get back to you later, Pepesha darling. Of course, our main character is Japan's hero, Shy. And even her secret identity's name sounds like the Japanese word for shy. It turns out Hiro's powers rely a lot on their mental state. When Shy is unable to save all the people from an incident, it breaks her such that she can't transform anymore. When heroes are truly resolved, they can even unlock more superpowers. Up till now, our heroes have just been dealing with stuff like natural disasters. Here come the villains. They bring some delightful Madoka vision with them, and I am here for it. I mean, this kid, low-key, is a Sailor Moon villain, turning people's hearts into crystals that use their resentment to turn them into monsters. And we can even fix the monsters with the power of love. By the way, that person that Shy didn't save, that girl didn't die. She was just in a coma for a little while, and now the two of them are friends. This could be me reading into things, but this shit is sapphic. Look at this ED. Look at this! There's no heterosexual explanation for this. Shy is an interesting series of contradictions. It's a magical girl show wearing a shonen costume. It's a superhero show that's less about action and more about everyday struggles. It has some painful comic relief scenes, some great action, and touching drama. Bullbuster. Our main character is joining a pest control company, and he's very excited, since it means a chance to finally pilot the mech he made, the Bullbuster. Why mechs to deal with pests? Well, the pests in question are fucking kaiju, which thankfully are thus far restricted to a small Japanese island. The former residents don't feel like it's lucky, but still. And yes, the kaiju look fucking terrible. Just bear with it. We're not going to be seeing them that much. While there is action in this show, it's not an action show. In addition to our mech pilots, the other characters are mechanics, secretaries, the accountant, because this is a business. And that's the real key to this show. This is a political anti-capitalist story, masquerading as an office politics story, masquerading as a down-to-earth mecha show. I'm not gonna lie, it did not grab me instantly, although I did find it funny straight away. But the more time I invested, the more I got out of it. The leftovers. The anime industry has been even more fucked than usual, meaning that shows are getting delayed. Here's hoping I don't have to use this segment all that often. In the last video, I talked about horror anime that I love, but that do not scare me. And let's make it clear, Zom 100 absolutely qualifies. Was I ever scared here? No. Did I love the shit out of it? Yes. Did it continue to be a surprisingly wacky, lighthearted romp? Absolutely. Do I still get the opening theme stuck in my head? You bet your ass. This show is about freedom and fun. One might even say, infectious fun. And this shit better get a second season. One where we treat our animators better, please.
And finally, the recommended category. If you have limited anime watching time, these are the shows that I think are worth checking out.
Welcome and yokoso to the longest recommended list I've ever made. This was one hell of a season. Shangri-La Frontier, Kusoge Hunter, Kamige ni Idoman Tosu. Sanraku, yes, I'm gonna use his game name because I don't fucking remember his real world name, is a shitty game hunter. He revels in finding the worst VR games and conquering them. Games so broken that you need superhuman resilience and reflexes to make it through all the bugs. After playing one infamously bad game, he gets persuaded to take a break with a god-tier game instead. Shangri-La Frontier. Taking his hard-won skills into a game that actually fucking works is like taking off training weights. And he's such a serious gamer that he just dives in and assumes he can figure it out without using any reference guides. He even skips the tutorial town entirely. He min-maxes his character, being dexterous and lucky, because defense is for losers who get hit. This show has femme characters. Enough of them so that even though I hate one of them, I'm still pretty happy. It even has a mascot character I actually enjoy. And that's burying the lead. The fucking fights. Every fight here is epic. Absolute love and attention have been put into this. The gamers feel like gamers, and we get a lot of action. Every episode feels so short. Like, what do you mean it's over? There's a bit of a trade-off, presumably to save some animation effort. Most episodes start with the same intro about the main character being a shit game player, and there are post-credit scenes in a Shangri-La mini-theater segment, which are pretty hit or miss. But I'll fucking take it. This is the VR MMORPG anime if you just want genuine gamers playing a game that actually seems fun to play with style and humor. Dark Gathering. Our intrepid main trio consists of a university student who acts as a tutor for a creepy little girl, Yayoi, who happens to be the cousin of his childhood friend who is also in university. Together, they travel around Japan to purposefully encounter the scariest, most dangerous ghosts they can. It's very Pokemon meets the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. The purpose of their collection? To defeat the monstrous spirit that took Yayoi's parents. What a perfect thing this was to have around for Halloween. Ragna Crimson. I told you there was another Ijinsei show on the list. It's slightly different. We're in a world that kind of feels medieval, but there are plenty of modern things like guns and trucks around, so it's got an unusual feel to it. There are humans and dragons. Our main character, Ragna, is a man who has appointed himself caretaker to a young girl. She's the best dragon hunter in town despite her tender age, and while he wants to be a dragon hunter, he's more or less given up on being a good hunter himself. The problem is, Ragna keeps seeing flash forwards to this girl dying a horrible death. This double-length first episode shows this imagery so many times it accidentally started tweaking my funny bone. I'm a sick individual. His future, super jaded self infuses his powers into Ragna and his memories of triumph and tragedy, allowing Ragna to save the girl. Crimson is our other titular character, and I'm not sure how much of this show I would have watched without Crimson. When there's an episode that's mostly about Ragna, it starts to feel stale, because Ragna is fucking boring. Crimson? Oh my god, Crimson. We'll talk more about Crimson later, but even if this show was worse, I would still watch it for Crimson. Crimson and Ragna team up with the goal of killing all dragons, Ragna being the blunt tool with enough power to get the job done, if he can stop being a dumbass, and Crimson being the mastermind who's going to make it happen. No magic school, no demon lord, just magical warfare on a large scale. Ragna's theoretical overpoweredness is countered by it having horrible effects on his body, and by the dragons they're fighting having ridiculous powers of their own, which I love. Fix the balance by buffing everyone until everyone feels OP. This show is a bit schlocky, but it's a lot of fun. Hoshikusu Telepath. Our main character Umika is socially awkward, and she thinks her problem with making human connections will be solved by aliens. Why does she think her stammering, anxious self would be able to talk to aliens? I don't know. She's kind of accidentally right. Her new classmate, Akeuchi, walks in and is just like, "Hey everybody, I'm an alien." Most people think she's just being silly, but Umika's heart beats a little faster. And while she fails at being able to talk to her extraterrestrial crush, it turns out aliens do have a solution. Forehead telepathy. Akeuchi can get a sense of your feelings and vague idea what you're thinking if there's forehead-to-forehead contact, which is depicted aggressively with sparkles. This is a cute girls doing cute things show about building rockets. Umika has always wanted to go to space to meet aliens, and while she now has an alien very close friend, she wants to help Akeuchi get back to space. So the theory is getting good at model rockets will help them go to space. We had a sapphic but kind of bad show. We had a good show that was kind of sapphic. And finally, a good sapphic show. Sayate no Paladin, Season 2. I have to remind myself that this is technically an isekai. It's the least isekai feeling isekai you're going to find. This show is much more reminiscent of Western fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, or Lord of the Rings. William Maryblood is a paladin, sworn to a nearly forgotten goddess of light, in a world where the pantheon of deities is quite actively involved. In fact, she's not the only god trying to court him. He gets into quests with Menel, perennial best boy contender, and asshole elf. Also, I ship them. In this season, our dynamic duo is on a quest with a group of dwarves to save the dwarves' ancestral mountain home from a dragon. Fucking told you this is some Tolkien shit. The downside of that is that there are so few femme characters, and the ones we have seem to be relegated to non-combatant. If you know enough about anime to be this deep into my list, you already know what number 1 is going to be. And I have to say, if you like that property, you should give Sayate no Paladin a try. Unless you're just here for the ladies, in which case, the next 2 shows will have you covered. Kusuriya no Hitorigoto. I feel bad for this show. Most of the time this would be anime of the season, but it's up against a titan. Mao lives adjacent to the pleasure district in the Chinese capital. Her father is an excellent doctor, and she's very much followed in his path. They make a lot of their living helping out in the pleasure district as a health service. Until Mao gets kidnapped. It could be worse. She's sold to the palace to be a lady-in-waiting for the consorts. She's wary, maybe too aware that being a commoner means your life is cheap if you piss off the nobles. She accidentally catches the eye of Jinshi, who figures out she's smarter than she's letting on. He starts to use her to solve crimes and help people. The Chinese setting of the show is a lot of fun. So are the mysteries. And a few of them I could figure out on my own because modern medical knowledge is OP. But it's not all mysteries. There's also court intrigue, interpersonal relationships, and the show has good comedy chops too. It's easy to fall into these characters. And Mao is just such a standout. You could have an entire reaction folder made up just of her. She's smart, but it's not like when a detective character feels omniscient. And she has a real weak spot when it comes to emotional, interpersonal situations. This is my read and not canon, but to me, Mao is neurodivergent arrow ace. And I love it. Sozo no Frieren. I feel like if you tangentially follow anime, you've at least seen memes of Frieren by now. This is another fantasy anime that doesn't have many of the common anime fantasy tropes. The closest we get is that we are in a hero versus the Demon King storyline, with the exception that that story is finished. The hero Himmel, the priest Hater, the dwarven warrior Aizen, and the elf mage Frieren defeated the Demon King on an epic adventure that spanned 10 years. And while this was a huge chunk of the lives of the humans, for Frieren, it's a blink of the eye. But that journey seems to have a greater effect on her than she's realized. The show constantly reminds us by stating time in terms of years since the hero Himmel's death. And on her current mission, a silly personal quest to collect as many spells as possible, regardless of their usefulness, she seems to keep finding out more about her previous allies, how they felt about her, and how she feels about them. It's also absolutely gorgeously animated, has slower, more meaningful episodes and character and world building, as well as awesome fights. All the characters are charming. Their relationships are fascinatingly subtle. My personal read is that Frieren is arrow ace. I know, 2 main characters in a row that I see this way. And to me, this story is a romance between her and Himmel, despite him being deceased. But she slowly realizes how much that connection meant to her, even if she didn't feel romance or lust towards him. When a show is this good, it feels like you could describe it all day without ever successfully getting across how awesome it is. Anyways, here's our super intelligent and wise Frieden with her head in a mimic. Kind of spare pickings for best boy this season, eh? I'll give some shoutouts to Okino from Bullbuster, which is kind of some pity votes for being less annoying than I thought he would be, and for Sanaraku from Shangri-La Frontier. I kind of feel like if any of the pieces from that show were different, the whole thing wouldn't work, and he manages not to feel like a default protag-kun despite coming dangerously close. That's it. It's rough out here. Thankfully, there's an elven asshole to save me. My best boy is Menel from Saihate no Paladin. He's a delightful asshole. I really liked his introduction to the series where William had to win him over. And at this point, he's been around Mr. Goody-Goody Paladin so long, it almost feels like he's keeping up being an asshole on purpose as a front, despite definitely being a champion of good. And I appreciate him for that. This season's dwarves, there wasn't much of personality going on there, which just made Menel feel even more necessary. Best Girl. We're much better fed in the Best Girl department. This season's nominees. Pepesha from Shy. In full G Gundam style, our Russian hero is a lush. Her superhero name is Spiritsu. In Soviet Russia, vodka rescues you. She's also a really good support system for everyone around her. And she knows it's wrong to assume someone's gender. Amaryllis. I still really like this character from Dr. Stone. I do feel like she had less to do in this half of the season. As a full side note, seasons being presented as part 1 and part 2 is a plague. Sorry Amaryllis, I don't really have anything new to say about you. You want to know why Shangri-La Frontier gets in the recommended tier despite being a VR MMORPG anime? Welcome to the Awesome Girls of Shangri-La Frontier mini section. Emil. She could easily just be the annoying mascot character, and I did find her mildly annoying at first. The Desuwa! Oh, I have no voice, fuck. The Desuwa thing does not work for me. But she gets some great character moments, great reactions, and good lines. And because this show is well written, Random Girlfriend Archer, I don't know her name, she's a recurring background character. It appears she's a new player having gotten dragged into the game by her boyfriend, and her gag is that she sees a weird-looking player character, assumes it's a monster, and pulls her bow. And then her boyfriend freaks out, like, there's no monsters in town, trying to prevent her from accidentally becoming a player killer. She's basically just a running gag, but I love her. This is less weird than the time I added a girl to the Best Girl nominations because she hit people with a chair, okay? Pencil Gone. She's a cunning fashion model in real life who plays a chaotic player killer in Shangri-La. She also once turned herself into the big boss of a trash game. She's such a force of personality and such a breath of fresh air for femme characters. And obviously, Fern and Frieren from Sozono Frieren are both a lot of fun. Occasionally the constant faces get to me, but their dynamic is super fun to watch. But the best girl that reigns supreme in this highly competitive season is lmao, a literal icon. She's carrying the show on her back effortlessly. She's a living reaction meme, a smart character who proves it with her actions, with realistic flaws. I think my read of her being neurodivergent and Arrow Ace is very reasonable and endears her to me even more. I especially love the combination of her being good-hearted. Like, she helps people even when she thinks it's not in her best interest, but she's also really savvy and self-serving.
Good. Now it's time for the trans non-binary highlight.
Another good sign for this season is that I have multiple characters to talk about here. Francois from Dr. Stone. They're admittedly more of a side character than one of the big action characters. Francois is the assistant to Ruisui. Their whole shtick is that they can anticipate someone's needs and have it ready in advance, as the world's most perfect servant, butler person. Anne from Paradox Live. As I was watching the show, I noticed that all the Phantom Metal users were guys except for Anne. So I looked into it, and it appears that they are a femme-presenting NB who uses they-them pronouns. Which not only is super fun to see, but my general understanding on the ground here in Japan is that there's less awareness of non-binary identities here than in the US or Canada, which is going to come up again shortly. So it's really wonderful to see. I wish they were in a better show because I really enjoyed what I saw of Anne. Picking best girl or best boy this season was particularly hard because my actual favorite character this season, best person, is Crimson. Motherfucking Crimson. Told you we'd be getting back to them. The show refers to Crimson with masculine pronouns, but given that they can change sex or age whenever they want and admit to appearing androgynous on purpose to appeal to more people, and Japanese doesn't really use gendered third-person pronouns in regular speech, I'm chalking it up to non-binary identities not being general knowledge in Japan, and I will be referring to Crimson as they, them. It's technically headcanon, but I feel good about it. Longtime viewers may remember that I have a soft spot for pretty long-haired psychos. Grail Sitcliffe from Kuroshitsushi, Prince Belphegor from Hitman Reborn, Cutthroat from Akudama Drive. Hot. That's very much an archetype that Crimson falls into. Hot, evil, conniving, manipulative. Maybe less stabby than most of the other characters I just listed, but nevertheless amazing. My favorite parts of Ragna Crimson are pretty much entirely Crimson making maniacal grins in harsh lighting. They are absolutely the star of the show, and quickly becoming one of my favorite anime characters in general. Woo, there were a lot of great shows this season, and a bunch of my favorites are continuing on to the winter 2024 season. So the real question is, will anything new be able to rise up and join these gems? We'll have to see next time. Bye-bye. I probably shouldn't be recording this today because I just got my voice back and this might wreck it again. But I've been waiting 2 weeks to record this, and if I don't record it, I can't edit it and it will never get done.